We're still standing. We rise in the face of every adversity. We rise to reclaim our dignity. We rise to honor our legends and our leaders. We rise to renew the hope of our people. We rise to lay hold of justice and prosperity. We rise in strength and solidarity. We rise for our children yet to be born. We rise to the glory of our Lord. We rise with a predestined victory. We rise for a better day. We shall not be erased. We rise up.
Shalom and welcome to We Need a Village Again, WNAVA's 2026 Black History Podcast. Empowered to rise, erase, not happening, dismissed, impossible. I want you to commit to join us every Wednesday through this Tuesday, and then tomorrow, Wednesday, the 11th of February through March 4th. We're a little bit off schedule because we had some technical difficulties. Hopefully we've got those resolved. And so I'm doing the precursor, the kickoff to the 2026 Black History Podcast. We have an excellent lineup for you. Today I'm going to precursor the Black History Podcast conversations with Faith, Uncolonizing Our Lens, Reclaiming a Kingdom Vision for Democracy. On tomorrow, February the 11th, we will have Dr. Latasha Levy. Dr. Latasha Levy is a professor, an associate professor at Howard. She is the founder of Black Star Rising, and she's going to address Black culture, owning our narrative because valid history shapes a powerful future. On the 18th of February, we're going to address health. On the 25th, we're going to talk about the prophetic rising of Africa, Africa rising with an African. And then we're going to close it out in addressing AI technology. You don't want to miss not one session. So welcome to We Need a Village Again, WNAVA 2026 Black History Podcast. Listen, Black history is more than remembering the struggles of the past. It's a time of honoring our legends, our leaders, and our legacy. It's a time of reflection and celebration and reconnecting, refueling, and building forward. Black history is a time for us to talk about Black people, Black culture, and Black issues. Now, I'm going to say this only one time. This does not demean or belittle or excuse or exclude any other people, any other culture, any other ethnicity. But this is Black History Month, and our focus is Black history. This Black History Podcast program is aimed to answer this moment, this prophetic moment, and with prophetic insight, moral clarity, bold resistance, and a bold proclamation to reject, erasure, to reclaim truth, and to rise to action. This year marks the 100th anniversary of Black history. 100 years we have been celebrating Black history and pressing and persevering against the odds, but we're still here. Black History Month began in 1926 under the leadership of Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, who originally established it as Negro History Week. As far back as then, Carter G. Woodson recognized a deliberate effort to erase Black culture, Black history, and Black contributions. He understood that when a people are erased, they lose their sense of belonging, drift from their purpose, and become weakened, making them vulnerable and susceptible to being disenfranchised and abused. I think you can agree, if you're of any consciousness, that today we're facing ongoing challenges to the freedoms and the protections won through struggle, efforts to roll back our civil rights, through policies to obstruct voting access for Blacks in particularly, largely censoring the teaching of our full history and undermining equity in education and justice. These actions are not accidental or coincidental. They echo the same forces that Woodson warned about, forces that seek to blur our identity, limit our opportunities, and weaken our collective resolve. Now, let me say, before I delve into this particular podcast, I want to just offer you a disclaimer. That disclaimer is it is necessary to address these fundamental truths. It's necessary that we speak about what's happening currently. We've dealt with it in the past. We're revisiting it because it's repackaged itself present day. And so for some of you, you may feel uneasy. The more colonized you are in your thinking, the more uncomfortable you become in hearing truths that delineate people groups. But you can't talk about the truth unless you talk about the truth. And we're going to talk about the truth about what's happening presently, because it is a reimaging of the past. It is a repackaging of the past. It's a reinsertion of the regression and the oppression of the past. Nope, we will not be erased, and it's impossible to dismiss us. We are formidable and we are prominent, necessary, and essential to world history and American history. Black history is significant. And so I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, but understand that discomfort is not the enemy of growth. Avoidance is the enemy of growth. And then others of you are going to feel affirmed and liberated. So they say that knowledge is power. Can you agree with that? Knowledge is power. However, knowledge is power only if we have accurate knowledge and we utilize the knowledge we have. If we do not utilize the knowledge we have, or if we do not receive and accept the knowledge we have, then it's just information. Listen to Hosea 4, 6 and 8, verse 8. Hosea 4, verse 6, and the first part of that is A. My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge because you have rejected knowledge. Now, we would say, well, that's Bible. That is Bible. But you know what? It is also a principle that is true and a scriptural principle that is true. So yes, knowledge is powerful if we can apply it, if it's accurate. Knowledge is the acquisition of truth. Understanding is the interpretation of truth, and wisdom is the application of truth. Go back and listen to this so you can absorb these principles and these insights. Knowledge is, you acquire knowledge, which hopefully, if it's accurate and solid, then it's truth. Knowledge is the acquisition. You acquire knowledge, and then you come to an understanding. That's the interpretation of the truth you receive. And then wisdom is simply the application of the truth that you receive. So I want you to give attention, because this podcast, this Black History podcast, is intentionally designed to challenge anti-Blackness through informed, fearless conversations with subject matter experts. Everyone coming after me is an expert in their subject, grounded in biblical and principled truth, truth to equip you to progress despite policy rollbacks and systemic resistance. We want to equip you to be ready for whatever is coming. So sit back, prepare yourselves to be filled with knowledge, understanding, and then the application of that is wisdom, the wisdom to do, to move out, to stand up and rise back. I'm kicking off the Black History podcast by examining the effects of colonization to help us understand the why behind our thoughts, the why behind our behaviors and our actions in this particular moment. Why do we do things that are against our well-being and our self-interest? Why do we feel guilty about what others do when they're responsible for their behaviors? There's a reason why. Colonization has adversely affected both the colonizer and those that have been oppressed by the colonizer. So How do we overcome the shame, the pain, the anger, and the inferiority? I'm going to address that in this podcast. Again, welcome. I'm Charlene Glover, the CEO of We Need a Village Again, WNAVA, and it is my privilege to kick off the 2026 Black History Podcast with you. My episode is titled Faith, Uncolonizing Our Lens, Reclaiming a Kingdom Vision for Democracy. So let's get started with expectation that God's got us. We are here by divine design, and He has a good plan for His people. Let's look at it in Luke. In Luke, the 4th chapter. Luke, the 4th chapter reads in the New King James Version, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." And listen to this. Because He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has anointed me to heal the brokenhearted. He has anointed me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are what? To set at liberty those who are what? Those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Now, let's talk about this before we go any further. Jesus said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord," which strongly suggests to me that God is not okay with people being oppressed, which suggests that He's not okay with oppressors, those who oppress others. And so we're in a prophetic moment. Yes, we have to do our part. Faith without works is dead. But not only do we have to do our part, God is working for us. God has gone before us. God is working on our behalf. So we have to stay engaged in the fight, not just a physical fight. We don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but we have a spiritual warfare. But there's both spiritual principles and there are natural principles that we must engage in to deal with this prophetic moment. So let's get in to this insightful teaching. Cultural erasure. Right now, we're seeing executive orders be signed by the slew innumerably and with intent to erase Black culture. Well, the first thing you need to understand is you cannot erase what is prominent in your society and has been from the very beginning. So that shows you the ignorance and the lack of understanding. It also shows you the darkness of the heart of individuals who think that they can be superior or that they are superior enough that they can supersede any other people group, and in particularly Black people. So let's talk about cultural erasure. Cultural erasure is the deliberate destruction of a group's traditions, memory, and history. And it is viewed as a pathway to controlling and potentially eliminating that group. Destroying a generation's culture can make it seem as if they never existed, and undermining people's art, symbols, and history can make them forget who they are. So our symbolism, our customs, our culture, our music, our food, our camaraderie and community, all those things make up our culture, and they are important to us. They identify us. Cultural erasure, the first step in liquidating a people is to erase their memory, destroy their books, our culture, and our history. Then have somebody write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, that nation of people will begin to forget what it is like, what it is, and what it was. Now, I think that is quite significant because we're living in that day. Listen to it. Carter G. Woodson said, "Those who have no record of what their forebears or their ancestors or those of their lineage have accomplished, lose the inspiration that comes from from the teaching of biography and history. So when we don't know, let me go back to that so you can capture that. When we don't know the history of our ancestors, when we don't know the history of our lineage, then we literally begin to feel insignificant. I had my first encounter back in 2000, probably 2009, thereabout. I was out of the country and I had a young lady. A couple had just gotten married and their family had given them a international trip as a part of their wedding gift. And they asked me, I was on a trip with elders touring the 7 churches of Asia Minor down to the Isle of Patmos with John, where John, the Revelator, spent his last days. And it was an incredible trip, but God began to reform me during that trip. I had several prophetic encounters with the Lord amongst the people I was traveling with and those that were a part of that tour. This young couple asked me, they said, Charlene, have you ever done any research or exploring your ancestors, your history, and where did you come from? And I did what most people who have never been trained to appreciate who God created you to be. I said, oh, I'm born again. Christ is where my real beginning it started, and that's where I'm focused at. Even though I gave that answer, there was something, that question unsettled me. And for several years, I would ponder that in my heart and I think, why in the world, why haven't I ever researched my history? Why haven't I looked back into my ancestry? Why is it that I have no interest in that? Because religion has a way of trapping you to demean you and to make you sterile in the way you think and the way you live. So you just take whatever's been told, you accept that as the truth, you accept that as the way, and you move in that direction without being conscious enough to think about, hey, God created me the way he did. Why, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made as I am. So why don't I want to know more about where I came from? Yes, my faith is bigger than anything, but I'm a human being with faith in God. And so this is, I've landed upon this quote that I think will speak to where we're going in this podcast. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. In other words, when you really believe something without facts or without truth, a fundamental understanding of the way things really are, and you choose ignorance, intentionally you're ignorant, you choose to have a belief about something that you know nothing about, or you become conscientiously stupid. In other words, you have engaged in a system or you have engaged in a way of life that will be distorted because you have not accepted the truth. So let's begin with expectation that God's got us. He is with us. We are in his time by his design, and he has a good plan for his people. I want to begin by defining some terms that are essential for you to understand. This podcast is the kickoff to how we're going to educate, equip, empower, and elevate you with understanding throughout the next several weeks through the Black History Month. A working definition that I want to share with you for the term colonization. How many of you have ever heard of colonization or understand the history and how this United States was colonized, how Africa was colonized, and how colonizers came and took over the land, the wealth, the people's lives, and subdued them and made them subservient? Well, for you to understand why we're living in the times we're in and what we can do about it, you need to be able to revisit history, and then let's move forward. A working definition of colonization is a long-term process in which one group seizes power over another, and through violence, law, education, religion, and culture conditions both the colonized and the colonizer to accept a racialized hierarchy, producing internal inferiority amongst the colonized and superiority amongst the dominant group. And enduring changes began to happen in the identity, the emotion, and the relationships and the social norms that persist even long after the colonial rule ended. So we're still living under a colonial influence where there is a white people group. That's a construct. Europeans, Anglo-Saxons, the white people group who believe that they're superior. What we see happening in the United States right now is nothing less than a religious lie and a religious spirit. It is ungodly. It is not Christian. It is not human. It's not given to the dignity of humanity. It is inhumane. Whenever we begin to malign and to belittle and diminish the human dignity of any person, it is inhumane and it is not God. But it is also in the very fiber of the United States of America. We were founded, this nation was founded with fault lines in it. None of our Constitution or none of our documents that we've established as found by the founding fathers were true. There was never any intention for all people to be equal. We are not one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So until we recognize that, we will be trying to engage in a system that has no intent for serving us with equality, no intent for us being equal. But God is the liberator. We saw that in Luke 4:18. God is our liberator. So with that being said, I want you to understand that the term colonizer is the spiritual influence that's happening in the U.S. right now. It is colonial rule. It is with racial hierarchy. It is with supremacy for white people and inferiority for everybody else, and inferiority in particularly for Black people. It has so impacted the colonizer that they believe they are superior or supreme, and it has so impacted the colonized in people like you and me, that our identity, our emotions, our relationships with one another, amongst our own people group, our social norms, all about our life has been distorted. So the way we see each other, the way we see ourselves, likewise with the colonizers. So it's evil on both sides. It's just that one is oppressed and one is the oppressor. The term for colonizer, I just gave it to you. Another term for colonizer is an oppressor. An oppressor, let me define for you an oppressor. An oppressor uses unjust power. They make use of their power in an unjust way. Oppressors wield authority in a burdensome, cruel, or harassing way, imposing unjust laws or taking advantage of others. Are we living in that? Can you consciously see that happening right now in the United States of America and the United States of America's influence through our government and our leaders and the oligarchy system? Can you see that at play and at work in the world? Yes, I can see that. So listen, we see it through the unjust use of power. We see it through physical and spiritual harm. Oppression can be both physical and emotional. It can be physical and emotional. It can be physical and spiritual. We saw it, the onset of it through slavery and violence and crushing, our spiritual harassments through demonic forces. This is not normal and this is not natural. But Jesus came. What did he say? What did he say he came to do? He came to set the captives free. He came to liberate the oppressed. In the Bible, an oppressor is someone like a Pharaoh, someone who cruelly used their powers to unjustly burden and exploit and harm others, treating people unfairly, often through violence and deceit. We see economic exploitation, You see the kidnapping of people. They call it disappearing. It's kidnapping of people and taking them away and putting them in camps or in prison sites unjustly. We see that, but we also see through the history of the scriptures, God has consistently called for justice and deliverance for the oppressed. One of our founding scriptures is out of Psalm 82 for WNAVA, We Need a Village Again, that we're to speak up for the oppressed. We're to seek justice for those who are treated unfairly. This concept covers tyrannical leaders, corrupt officials, and systemic injustice. The Bible emphasizes that God hears the cries of the oppressed. That's why I say that this is prophetic, because God has to respond to this evil. The oppressed and those that are oppressed are poor, they're vulnerable, and they're weak. That don't mean they just don't have money. It means we don't have the power to push back the rule or to end the rule of the wicked. But God will end the rule of the wicked because it's an evil force. The scripture is clear. And let me use the term with one of our guests who will be on with us in a couple of weeks, Sandra Babu Bontain, who is an African. She's going to talk to us about Africa arising. She uses the term my people. So let me just insert that, my people. In the words of Sandra, let me say to you that the present day acts of regression and oppression are summoning that God to act on our behalf. He will not ignore the cries of you, me, his people. He will not ignore the cries of his people. He will hear and answer. He will move on our behalf. And that's why we can't give up. We can't get tired. We have to begin to proclaim we are no ways tired, because this is a setup for God to show himself. So the exploitation of oppressors are seen today as it was in early days through the harsh labor, the cheating of wages, the stealing of property, the forced labor that where people are made to work long hours without gaining the benefit of those efforts. God's response, God is depicted in the scripture and realized in real life as our deliverer. He hears the oppressed when we cry. He hears the calls for justice. As a matter of fact, Isaiah 1:17 says, learn to do right and seek justice, defend the oppressed. James 5:1-6 warns the wicked, the oppressor, of what will happen and that their wealth cannot save them. So what do we have to do? The first thing we have to understand is, why do we think the way we think? Are we under the influence of colonized thinking? Are we thinking in terms of beliefs and ideologies that have been put upon us, and we've never examined them? We've just accepted them to be so, or to be, this is the way life is. No, this is the time to throw off the yoke of the oppressor and to rise up from the oppression. Let's read it in Romans 12:2 in the Amplified. It says, and do not be conformed to this world any longer with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed and progressively changed as you mature spiritually by the renewing of your mind, focusing on godly values and ethical attitudes, so that you may be able to prove for yourselves what is the will of God, what his will is, and that which is good and acceptable and perfect in his plan and purpose for you. So we've got to re-examine, not just in church. Church has not done us good in a lot of ways in the African American community, because we've not learned how to walk in our faith outside of the four walls and go into the market square and live our truth as born again believers. You are a holy nation, a royal priesthood, a holy people. You are a people called by God out of darkness into his marvelous light. So when we're born again, in particularly, we should not be bowed down in our hearts, in our dreams, in our visions, in our aspirations to anyone, because no one is greater than God. So now let me define for you the term uncolonized. Most people use the term decolonized, and we're going to define both of them. The term uncolonized means to stop thinking, believing, valuing yourself through someone else's rules and narratives, and to reclaim your own identity, your own voice, and your own worth. That's what uncolonized means. It means questioning why certain histories are taught as unimportant, such as Black history, why rejecting the idea that success must look like someone else's culture, and that your culture, your people cannot be successful. Restoring, I'm talking about uncolonized examples, restoring pride in your language, in our faith, our traditions, and our story, restoring pride. Let me tell you something. We need to be, if nobody else believes in us, we need to believe in us. We need to celebrate us. But out of our colonial impact, we have come to the place of not even being happy for each other, not being able to celebrate one another, not being able to work collectively together, because mistrust was sown amongst us. We were separated and divided and then conquered. So one group was the in-house people were better than the outhouse people, while all the time they were all bound and under rule, under control of a colonizer, under control of a slave master. So we've got to take this back. We've got to be able to celebrate one another, support one another, encourage one another, pray for one another, and build one another up and move collectively. You can tell I'm getting stirred up, right? So let's look at the term to uncolonize in the sense of what is it that we need to stop doing? It means to stop thinking, believing, let me say it again, we just did it, and valuing yourself through someone else's rules, narratives, and reclaim your identity, your voice, and your worth. That's what you're going to have to decide to do. You need to teach it to your children, your grandchildren. Examine, where did this come from? Why do I think this way about myself or people like me? You know, the media has really done a bad rap for us, because anytime anything happens that's bad and Black, they say, they define Black. The Black person was Black. You could always tell when it wasn't a Black person because they don't put identifiers on it. If you're a social media content creator and you go out and use platforms, go out and I've been experimenting with this as a social experiment. If you just go out and say, I want children learning, and I want children playing, and I want children using innovative tools, you know what's going to happen? You're not going to get Black children first. You're going to get a whole list of a whole collage of other children. But if you go and put Black children, they'll come up. Why? Because we're living in a world with a mindset of some people are supreme and some people are inferior. It's up to us to take back our narrative. And on tomorrow, Dr. Levy is going to talk about owning our own narrative, telling our own stories, and being proud of who God created us to be. So now let's look at the term decolonize. Decolonize. What does decolonize? So uncolonize has to do with how you think. Decolonize means to actively dismantle systems, policies, and practices that were built to control, exploit, or exclude people, and to replace them with fair and just alternatives. Now let me say this. You cannot decolonize a system until you uncolonize your way of thinking. So can I just be personal? One of the reasons we don't get involved, we don't vote, we don't serve now we serve in our church. We'll go to church 7 days a week. I'm not knocking that. I'm saying that's not the day we're in. The day we're in is for the manifestation of the kingdom. The church does not need the manifestation of the kingdom only. All of society, the marketplace needs the manifestation of the kingdom. And so we don't vote. We don't serve on school boards. We don't get involved in social activities. And so we turn our children over to a school system who's not designed to educate them for their future prominence. It's just to get them through a grade and to deserve or to earn the federal dollars and the state dollars that are allocated for the school system. It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility for our lives, our household, for our communities. No one's coming to our rescue. Jesus has already done that. Now he needs you. He needs your mama, your grandmama, and Tasha, and everybody in between to rise up so that we can begin to change the trajectory of our lives and to ensure that our legacy has promise. So decolonize again, to actively dismantle systems, policies, and practices that were built. They were designed, it's not happenstance, to control, to exploit, or to exclude people, and to replace them with fair and just alternatives. Decolonize literally means that we cannot continue to do what we've been doing the way we've been doing it. It's the outer work that we do. See, uncolonize has to do with your inner self. Decolonize has to do with what's around you. It means changing laws, education, institutions, and power structures that were designed to benefit some while harming others. Now, you would say, well, we can't do that. You know, the only reason you think that is because you've been told that. You have been told that you are incapable or impotent or limited, and you are as you think. A man is as he thinks in his heart. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and God is always for the righteous. He's always on the side of what is right and righteous and what is true. God is always with those who want to move in the direction of uprightness. So it is the outer work. Decolonize is the outer work, to change laws. You can't change laws if you don't have any clue about how the system works. And some people say, I don't want to hear about politics in church. Well, find me anywhere, look at the 7 mountains and tell me under this administration, it is more pronounced than any other that politics is everywhere. God didn't intend for politics to be the influence. He intended for government, for governing, orchestrating civic and social life for the well-being of all people. And so because of this, we now have to educate ourselves and educate our children so that we can make a difference and we can have things differently. Let me give you a couple examples of decolonizing. Reforming education to include accurate history. I'm doing that through this podcast. We're going to present to you information that will help you come to a better understanding of how to advocate for yourself, how to understand how systems work, how to be productive with new technology. Because if you're ignorant, you're already failing. If you're unaware, if you're ill-informed, disinformed. And let me just put a pin here and say, why do you think that some of the biggest ill and uninformed and disinformation campaigns are levied toward the African American community, especially during voting time or any key times of movement in our society? Why do you think so? Why do you think there's prohibition on Black people voting? Because we are people of movement. We come from a people of movement, of raising up, rising up, making change. And the enemy knows that if we ever get our right mind back, that we are equal to anybody and we are created in the image and likeness of God like everybody else, and we stop thinking the way we've been told to think and acting the way we've been made to feel, oh my Lord, imagine what could happen. I can only imagine. So reforming education to include accurate history, challenging policies that produce unequal outcomes. I don't want policies that are indifferent to me and beneficial to others. I want everybody to benefit, but I'm definitely going to speak up for myself. So we're engaged in civic education. We're engaged in social justice activism and advocacy, because I'm doggone not going to be sitting there watching the Titanic implode, watching the Titanic explode and saying we're going to have a wreck. No, I may have a wreck and I may have a few bumps, but it'll be because I am definitely trying to turn that Titanic, because that's just what it feels like, but trying to turn in a different direction called favor, called equity, called justice, redesigning systems so that they serve people, not control them. God never intended for people to control people. It is ungodly. Dominionism was never about domination. Let me say that again, because there's a theology on dominionism that is being operated, and particularly by the Republicans. They are operating in a theology called dominionism, which means that they are exceptional, exceptionalism. It is not Christian, it is not Christ-like, and it is inhumane. I just need to say that. So let me close with, I'm not closing quite yet, but let me wrap up with this. Uncolonize is a change mindset. Decolonize is the changing of the system. Uncolonizing frees the mind from imposed beliefs. Decolonizing reforms the system that enforces them. Let me say that again. Uncolonizing frees your mind from imposed beliefs, beliefs that you've never examined, things you've thought about yourself, about your people group, and about your success, your failure, your capabilities, your incompetencies, all of that, not because you examined and concluded that, but because it has been put upon you. And then decolonizing means to reform systems that enforce them. You will never be able to change a system until you change your mind, your way of thinking. So let me just give you a highlight of some of what we're still dealing with and why we must rise up. We must reject being erased, and we should say, dismiss, you're not dismissing me. Impossible, because I'm not going away. Effects of the Jim Crow laws after the Civil War, that is still, so they couldn't keep us in shackles, but the laws that were put in place and that exist today are still enslaving us or holding us in bondage in our minds and in our upward mobility. Legalized racial segregation is one of those laws. It was a mandated separation of black and white. The doctrine was separate but equal. Well, if we're equal, why do we have to be separate? That's just one of those. The legalized racial segregation, we saw that in schools and through our transportation and hospitals and housing and all the things that the amenities and those aspects of everyday living. We still see that. It's not as blatant, but it is very real. It still exists. Dr. Thomas is going to talk to us about healthcare and how to advocate for ourselves, how to navigate the healthcare system so that we're not the victim of health disparities, health injustices. And then number 2, systematic disenfranchisement. Systematic disenfranchisement. It simply means that Black Americans are blocked from voting or having proper representation in political power arenas. Because see, politics is not about governing people, and it's not about orchestrating communities to be healthy. It's about who has the power, and whoever has the power has the say, and whoever has the say call the shots. But that is not God's design. And so systematic disenfranchisement literally means keeping us from having our voice heard, from casting our vote. I can't imagine not being able to vote informed now that I understand the power of having a say, being informed and having a say. We saw it with our ancestors. The civil rights movement was about having the right to vote. Poll taxes, literacy tests, intimidation through violence. All of that is it's repackaged under Jim Crow, and it's now being represented under this administration. Economic suppression and labor exploitation. Early days, it was sharecropping. Now we see that it is preventing wealth accumulation because we don't get the same opportunities for wealth and equality, living wage, being able to have properties without debt. It is a way of keeping Black people, African American Black people, bound or prohibited from being served with equality. Number 4, educational inequality. Underfunded Black schools. It's designed to restrict intellectual and leadership development. I'm telling you, I have seen this firsthand in schools that are in higher tax brackets where people pay for their communities to be nice through their tax base. The schools are designed to raise not students, but leaders. I have firsthand experience with a 4th grader who literally, in his 4th grade class, was the mayor of the city came to speak to 4th graders and to talk to them about college. We don't see the furthering of our children's academic progress or their educational investment to be about their future. It is about the moment that we're in. Other ethnicities prepare their children to be leaders. So that's why they get the positions. That's why they're in the seats of authority. They have a mindset that this is what I deserve. We have a mindset that that's just something that just doesn't happen for us. I dare you to uncolonize your thinking. I dare you to uncolonize your thinking. My God, just imagine if each one of us could get a renewed mind and a mind that is convinced that we are as much and essential as any other people group. My Lord, you know what? The devil in hell is afraid and the devil on the earth is afraid. I'm telling you. Number 5, criminalization of Black life, disproportionate sentencing, use of incarceration to re-enslave through prison labor. Now prisons are an industry. Prisons are an industry. Under the Trump administration, they have a campaign to roll out these prison centers throughout the U.S. I just heard the other day in Social Circle, Georgia, where there's a population of 5,000 people, they want to build a prison system for immigrants. That's what they say. It'll be for anybody they choose to detain. But for immigrants, that will house 10,000 people. The criminal system would be larger than the actual community. These are all a part of the Jim Crow system at work to keep you and I and others from ever prospering and being a competitor to their way of thinking of themselves. But you know, if we all came from the same stock, created by the same source, I would say that I am as superior as anybody else. Let me go on. Number 6, racial terror and violence. In early days, it was the lynching. So it intimidated people. They didn't have to have guns all the time. They just put enough fear. But I believe there's a new breed of people. I believe there's a new breed of Blacks. We're not turning the other cheek for the sake of being slapped again. We're rising up. Not in violence, but in conviction that we deserve an equal place like any other people. And once your mind is uncolonized, you can begin to deconstruct the systems around you. Violence, tolerated and ignored by law enforcement. How many? Innumerable. We can't count the number of young Black lives lost over the past decade plus. Just police brutality while they did nothing but be Black and buy Skittles, be Black and be sleep at home, be Black and just have a bad moment That's ungodly, and it is not acceptable, and it is not okay. Trauma passed through generations. When a person says to you, a white person or anybody else says, why can't you just get over it? Your comeback should be, when it stops with you and others like you, we can all move on. See, we may not be in shackles, but we are still under that enslaved mentality. We're still under the mentality that says that one people group is better than another. A white people group is better than a black people group. I am pushing back with resistance through education, through empowerment, and elevating you to understand that it's not okay about what's happening. It is ungodly. And for people that think it's okay, more power to you. That's not my claim. Racial violence. Number 7, housing segregation and redlining. I don't have time to do the history course. I'm just giving you nuggets that you can go and research and begin to get your mind renewed and uncolonize your way of thinking. Listen, when we've had mortgages denied, insurance policies higher than others for less value, home loans at higher rates than others. All of that is a part of disenfranchising us. Now, let me tell you something. I love what Dr. Levy says, and she'll share it in tomorrow's episode. She says, America has never truly been integrated. It has been desegregated, but it's never been integrated. Because when you're integrated, you will have equality. Whatever systems are working would work to the advantage of all people. Health disparities. Dr. Andrea Thomas is going to talk to us this week. She's going to lead the conversation about health disparities and what we need to do and how we can advocate for ourselves when we are being treated, but we don't feel that it's right. See, one thing about Black people, we are intuitive. We have a sensibility about something right and something wrong. And we need to learn how to reclaim our voice and say, no, thank you. That doesn't work for me. And understand that you are your best advocate. Health disparities, segregated hospitals, higher mortality rates, limited access to preventive medical care, even to the point where we don't have jobs that we can just take off and go get treated during the day. So most of the time we lose pay if we don't have an executive position to be able to go and just maintain our well-being. Mistrust of medical systems reinforced by abuse and neglect. Tuskegee Institute, I can name on and on and on of the experimentations that have happened with Blacks that cause us to mistrust. But we need to learn how to advocate for ourselves and how to screen those who want to care for us. Number 9, psychological and cultural harm. I'm going to do every point under this topic. Internalized inferiority imposed by law and culture. Automatically, when you show up, somebody assumes that there's something wrong, that you don't belong. And when you have a sense of belonging and you project that, then they mishandle you because now you're uppity. Yeah. Erosion of identity and self-worth. This is the psychological effects of the colonization and colonizers' effects on our lives through now what is operating as the new Jim Crow. Constant exposure to humiliation and exclusion. Cultural expression restricted or criminalized. In Texas, in 2023, we had a House Bill 567 passed called the Crown Act. It is creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. A Crown Act was put forth as a bill that our governor signed into law because they didn't want us wearing our natural hair. It's a part of our culture. I'm sorry if people are not okay with me being okay with me being okay. I'm sorry about that, but not apologetic, because that is who we are. We need to be decent. We need to be respectful, but we don't need to be clones, and we don't need to lose who we are, that God created us to be, because he created us to be wonderful, beautiful. We are wonderfully and beautifully created in his image and his likeness. And then number 10, I'm talking about the effects of Jim Crow. Intergenerational trauma. Isn't it interesting that people think that, well, if it happened a long time ago, it's over? Have you ever sprung your ankle or twisted your foot or injured a part of your body or limb? Years later, you can still sometimes step the wrong way, move the wrong way, or feel the adverse effects of that. How in the world could our people have been traumatized emotionally, mentally, relationally, financially, in every facet of life, and it not be passed down generationally through the mother's womb, through relating, through behaviors, survival strategies shaped by oppression? Many Black homes are always talking about be careful, be safe, don't do this like this. Why? Because we understand the potential harm. Why am I sharing this with you for Black history? Because it is present day. It has reared its ugly head. And I think to be informed is to be forewarned, is to be able to withstand what you're dealing with. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So I'm sharing with you sensible, principled truths that are necessary for you to navigate around what is happening so that you're not bound by the ignorance or by the forces, okay? Long-term impact on our family structures and our mental health. Many African Americans today are talking about their mental health because of the constant stress. I was doing some social justice work and civic work a couple of years ago, working with a group, and the gentleman was around about my age, and he said to me, he said, Pastor Glover, what Black person do you know in America that wouldn't have high blood pressure right now with all that we're dealing with? Well, your high blood pressure, your eating disorder, all the things that are happening to you can probably, to some extent, outside of your lack of discipline, could very well be based on the fact that you're living under constant pressure, subliminally, emotionally. So let me wrap it up with the foundation of the modern systemic inequality through Jim Crow. Jim Crow did not disappear. It evolved into mass incarceration, educational inequities, economic disparities, voting restrictions, and policy-driven inequalities. Jim Crow was not a set of laws. It was a system designed to control, exploit, erase, and weaken people long after slavery officially ended. Colonization established the logic of domination. So that's why we had to be dehumanized, because to control and lynch and mishandle people and dehumanize them, you had to make them less value. Yep. Jim Crow enforced it through the law. Civil rights challenged it through faith. Present day rollbacks attempt to repackage the Jim Crow law and the domination of colonization. The struggle is merely not political, it is moral and spiritual. That is why, because it is spiritual, it is a call to believers, those who are followers of Christ, all who have a moral sense, a moral compass, to rise up. Inaction is antithetical to true faith. To be disengaged is antithetical to true faith. The work before us is not new. It is a continuation of a sacred responsibility to confront systems that deny God's image in humanity, to speak truth without fear, and to ensure that justice is not diluted, not disguised, and never abandoned. The truth is, my people, genuine superiority never requires and never operates in dehumanizing, antagonizing, or vilifying others. When such behaviors appear, they do not signal strength, they expose fragility, fear rooted in insecurity, threatened identity, and a refusal to confront truth. Authenticity, on the other hand, does not show up with an announcement or bull's horn. It doesn't show up with fanfare. Strength does not need to flex its muscles. Intelligence does not demean others with labels like low IQ. And true confidence does not rely on stoking fear to maintain control. It stands firmly, quietly, and without apology. Authenticity, true strength, does not have all of the tapestry of looking something that it is not. My people, although this is our present day shameful and painful reality, I understand that you're tired, and being tired is a reality. But giving up is not an option. This is a prophetic moment by God's design. He's doing more than you can even imagine, working through this system to deal with the foundation, the origin of America's sin, the original sin of hatred toward other people. We call it racism. It is God dealing with the nations because of the misuse and abuse of people's lives, just as the blood of Abel cried out when Cain killed him. The blood of the innocent is crying out to God, and God is visiting the earth. Let me say this. This is a prophetic moment by God's design, and we must rise up to resist and advance. We must rise up to resist erasure, to resist marginalization, to resist being dismissed. Listen, as the Lord wills, I plan to come back with a Rise Up campaign. I've been praying since last year. How do we do this, Lord? What do we do? I'm finally coming to the understanding of what it is that God wants to do in the earth. See, God wants to be glorified, and He's willing to use whomever that will submit to Him and let Him be seen as Yahweh Adonai, Lord, Master, Sovereign God. So listen to this. Genesis 1:26 through 28 as I close. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in His own image, and in the image of God, He created him, male and female, He created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. My beloved, you are the Omega Day. You are created in the image and likeness of Almighty God. You are brilliant and resilient, and you have great grace for this hour that we're in. Don't shrink back. Don't give up. Don't allow your weary days to be your end days. Allow your weary days to motivate you to move forward for better days. As a matter of fact, the Bible says, if you faint not, you will receive your reward. We will not faint because God will renew our strength. I want to thank you for joining me for the kickoff of the 2026 Black History Podcast. I want to invite you to join us tomorrow, Wednesday, February 11th, for the regularly scheduled podcast for a conversation with Dr. Latasha Levy. Her topic is titled Black Culture, Owning Our Narrative, because Valid History Shapes, a Powerful Future. I want you to put on your schedule and plan to join Dr. Levy in this powerful conversation and presentation. She is the founder and executive director of Black Star Rising. Her social media handles are listed there. She's an associate professor at Howard University for Black culture. She is a powerful, insightful woman of God that I believe will help you understand this is the moment that we have come to by God's design, and we must rise up. So commit on your calendar to join us for the rest of the month. Every Wednesday, we will have a new inspiring guest, expert in their field, who's going to be able to speak to you about topics that are relevant for today. And then lastly, I want to invite you to share our flyer, to share our promo. We Need a Village Again is our social justice ministry. Readers Are Leaders is our K-8 reading tutorial program. The program begins on March 7th through April 11th, and registration is open now. Make sure you go check us out, scan the QR code, go to We Need a Village Again, www.WNAVA.com/readers are leaders, and take advantage of this opportunity. Though we are tired and we are being strained in every kind of way, the truth is we are not going to go out like that. We're investing in our children. We're still going to look forward to a prosperous future because God's plan for us is good, even though we may be in the face of adversities. Lion dens call for God. Burning fires call for God. A fourth man showed up, and he's showing up for you and me. God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of the kickoff of our 2026 Black History Podcast.
We're still standing. We rise in the face of every adversity. We rise to reclaim our dignity. We rise to honor our legends and our leaders. We rise to renew the hope of our people. We rise to lay hold of justice and prosperity. We rise in strength and solidarity. We rise for our children yet to be born. We rise to the glory of our Lord. We rise with a predestined victory. We rise for a better day. We shall not be erased. We rise up.